As Westeros recovered from the long night, a new power was rising in Essos, in a great peninsula, amidst a chain of volcanoes known as the 14 Flames. People learned to tame dragons and make them the most fearsome weapon of war the world had ever seen. They were the Valyrians. The Valyrians claimed they were descended from dragons themselves and were kin to the great beasts they now controlled. The origins of dragons are lost to legend. In Karth, it is said a second moon cracked like an egg and 1,000,000 dragons poured forth. In Ashai, ancient texts claim that a nameless people first tamed dragons in the shadow and brought them to Valyria. But the Valyrian tale seems the truest. The dragons sprang forth as the children of the 14 Flames themselves. The beauty of the Valyrians was otherworldly, with hair of palest silver or gold, and eyes in shades of purple not found amongst other men. Some maesters claim this was merely the result of careful breeding, while others see it as proof they were not entirely human. The Valyrians had no kings. They called themselves the Freehold, for all landholding citizens had a voice in their rule. Before Valyria, the dominant power in Essos was the Empire of Old Geese, a civilization built on the backs of slaves. Its founder, Grasdan the Great, created the Lockstep legions, disciplined soldiers with tall shields and 3 spears. For centuries, the Giscari Empire reigned supreme, conquering and subjugating all its neighbors. They were the first great empire. 5 great wars were fought between the rising Freehold and the old Empire of Geese. Each time, the Giscari legions were broken by the ultimate weapon of war, the dragons of Valyria. During the 5th and final war, the Valyrians chose to make sure there would be no 6th. The ancient brick walls of Old Geese were razed. Its colossal pyramids and temples were given over to Dragonflame. The fields were sown with salt, lime, and skulls, ensuring nothing would ever grow again. The Giscari were slain or enslaved, their culture erased, their language forgotten. So do empires end, and others arise. What now remains of the once proud empire of Old Geese is a paltry thing, a few cities clinging to the great Slaver's Bay. Astapor, the Red City, is best known for creating the unsullied, eunuch slave soldiers raised from boyhood to be fearless warriors. Yunkai, the Yellow City, is a disreputable place ruled by wise masters who trade in pleasure, slaves, and corruption. And Marine, the largest of the cities, where the great masters train slaves to fight and die for their pleasure in the blood-soaked fighting pits. From the Giscari, the Valyrians learned their most deplorable trait, slavery, and their hunger for it was endless. The burning mountains of the 14 Flames were rich with ore, gold, silver, iron, and tin. And the Valyrians' mines needed bodies. None can say how many perished toiling in the Valyrian mines, but the number was so large as to surely defy comprehension. From this ore, and with powerful magic, their smiths forged Valyrian steel, blades of unnatural strength that would never lose their edge. The secrets of its forging were lost in the Doom, but thousands of these legendary blades remained scattered across the world. As Valyria's power grew, it expanded in all directions, conquering new lands to feed its insatiable hunger for slaves and ore. On the western shores of Essos, the Valyrians raised new cities, which we know today as the Free Cities. Qohor and Norvos were founded by religious sects, while wealthy merchants established trading colonies like Lys and Old Volantis. These cities chose their own leaders, rather than receiving archons dispatched from Valyria on dragonback to oversee them. The great cities of the Rhoynar, masters of the river, resisted the Valyrian expansion for centuries. The kingdom of Sarnor also survived, protected by the Great Plains and the Horselids who roamed them. But one city is unique among all the others, for it was founded not by the will of the masters, but by the defiance of their slaves. The tales say that a huge fleet of slaver ships became victim to a mass uprising. The slaves seized control. Knowing there was no place to hide from the freehold's wrath, they sailed north to the far, forlorn corners of Essos. Legend says their moonsingers prophesied a safe harbor, a secret lagoon hidden from the world by mists and brackish water. There, on 100 small islands in that remote lagoon, the freed slaves laid the foundations of their new home. For centuries they remained hidden. And even after revealing themselves, their city would be known as the Secret City, the City of Bravos. They were a people who were no people, scores of races, 100 tongues, and hundreds of gods. They shared only a common language and one unifying belief, that they were now free, where once they had been slaves. And those who could not fight and would not be slaves, but were unable to withstand the might of Valyria, fled. One people succeeded, made courageous by their faith in the Seven. These tall and fair-haired people set sail across the narrow sea. They were the Andals. And so, as the Valyrian freehold reached the height of its power, its conquests scattered the seeds of its own future rivals across the world. For 5,000 years, the Valyrian freehold was the greatest power in the known world. Its might was absolute, its culture unrivaled. The great Dragonlord families, 40 in all, vied for power and influence within the freehold, their rivalries legendary. They were pyromancers and sorcerers, their knowledge of the higher mysteries far exceeding that of any other people. They built roads of fused stone that stretched across the continent, roads so perfectly constructed that they endure even to this day. Their empire was the greatest the world had ever known, and they believed it would last forever. They were wrong. Of the 40 great families, one of the lesser was House Targaryen, who held a small outpost on an island at the edge of the empire. The Targaryens were far from the center of power, but they possessed a unique gift, a dreamer named Daenerys. 12 years before the end, Daenerys had a powerful and terrifying prophetic dream, a vision of fire and ash, of the utter destruction of Valyria. Unlike the other Dragonlords, her father, Aenar, took his daughter's prophecies seriously. He sold his estates in the freehold. He gathered his family, his 5 dragons, and all his wealth, and abandoned Valyria, sailing for their lonely outpost of Dragonstone. The other Dragonlords in Valyria mocked this act, calling Aenar a coward for fleeing. For 12 years, they laughed. Then, on a day like any other, the prophecy of Daenerys the Dreamer came true. The doom came to Valyria. Every hill for 500 miles exploded, filling the air with ash and smoke and fire, so hot and hungry that even dragons were consumed. The ground splintered and collapsed. The sea boiled and rushed in, and the proudest city in the world was swallowed by the waves. In a single night, the Valyrian freehold, its people, its dragons, and its magic were wiped from the face of the earth. The cataclysm was so great, it was felt across the world. The skies of Essos were choked with ash for years. The land of Valyria was shattered, and the sea around it became known as the Smoking Sea, a cursed and demon-haunted place. It is said that no ship that sails into the Smoking Sea ever returns, and that the waters are home to twisted, monstrous creatures. The cause of the doom is unknown. Some say the sorcery of the Dragonlords finally backfired upon them. Others whisper that the constant delving of the slave mines weakened the 14 flames until the mountains themselves collapsed. Whatever the cause, the world was changed forever. The century of blood followed, as the free cities in the Dothraki tore the corpse of the Empire apart. The secrets of Valyria were lost. The knowledge of sorcery, of road building, and of forging new Valyrian steel vanished in an instant. All the great Dragonlords of the 40 families were destroyed, all but one, on their lonely island. The last Dragonlords in the world, House Targaryen had survived. They were the last remnant of the greatest empire the world had ever known, the final children of Valyria.